Major funding for this program provided by the Moving Image Trust Fund. Additional funding for this program provided by the Arkansas Agriculture Department.
Hello, I'm Tony Brooks, and this is Agri Arkansas. As we celebrate AETN's 50th anniversary, today on Agri Arkansas, we look back on a few historical highlights of the past 150 years in three of Arkansas's agricultural powerhouses: cotton, rice, and poultry. While our state's agricultural heritage is rich and diverse well beyond these three factors, they have each in their own way defined and reflected the state of agriculture in Arkansas.
Of course, agriculture's always played an important part in the economy of the state of Arkansas. The number one cash crop would have to be considered cotton. Before the Civil War, 1/2 of all the cotton produced in the world came from the United States. But at the end of the Civil War, just 5 years later, there was virtually no cotton that existed due to the war and the devastation that followed it. So it took many, many years for that economy to come back. Cotton just became part of our society once they had set up the system of sharecropping that followed after the Civil War. The cotton gins and the cotton buyers, the cotton brokers, the plantation owner, followed by the laborers. And so once you had this in place, it was very hard to get out of that rut and to try something else.
Commercial rice production began in Arkansas in about 1896, or at least the first attempt. And Mr. Fuller tried to grow some rice. After 1 year, and he had moderate to limited success, he spent some time in Louisiana for a couple of years learning how they were growing rice down there. Came back and then a couple of years later and was able to successfully begin rice production.
Most of the poultry in the period right after the Civil War was pretty much farm production. People had yard chickens, sort of like you watch on Little House on the Prairie. The people bring their eggs into the general store and they barter or sell them for something. Everything was fresh. There was no refrigeration of any sort. Not much changed in that period up until probably World War I.
After the turn of the 20th century, cotton prices more or less remained stable for a while, but then when World War I came along, the demand worldwide, because so many European countries were clamoring for it, our military forces needed it, the price shot up to 1917. It was just an unbelievable price per pound for cotton. Well, unfortunately, by the end of the war in 1918, it didn't take very long to 1919. The world market was almost flooded with cotton, and it took through the 20s before the cotton market really began to stabilize and come out of it.
The flood of 1927 had a major impact on everybody involved, and recovering from that took some time. And up until that point, there had been predominantly cotton grown throughout the Delta.
The flood of 1927 was devastating to the cotton crop, as were the drought years of 1930 and 31, the so-called Dust Bowl years. It was just a hard, devastating time for farmers through the 20s and the 30s, especially if you were a cotton farmer.
After the rice industry began to grow, enough of the farmers got together and formed a cooperative and figured out that they can better market their rice as a group than they can individually. And that was the beginnings of what is now Riceland Foods.
Back in the late 20s and early 30s, some people began to aggregate poultry in larger numbers and then take it to more distant markets. One of the big things that happened in the 30s, of course, in this area was the Dust Bowl. The folks that stayed on their land, as the poultry industry began to grow and as the contracts began to develop, it gave them a way to make a decent living for their family and maintain their rural lifestyle.
After World War II, there was a huge effort to start trying to channel rivers and try to prevent the flooding or to reduce the flooding potential. With the development of more mechanized machinery, you're able to clear land in a very short amount of time. The problem is that it was swampland that held a lot of water, which again made it not very conducive for cotton production. Ultimately, soybeans and rice began expanding during that time.
The big explosion started post-World War II. That was driven by a lot of different things. In addition to the world wars and larger urban markets being in existence, the rural electrification process, people had refrigeration. Also, the road systems began to be developed. What a lot of the feed manufacturers did was they expanded into poultry production. If some companies were more successful, increased profits, they would acquire other companies that were less successful, and the scale and size began to grow and develop.
We've seen population swings. Southern residents ended up in Detroit, Chicago. They went out west to California. They were able to obtain jobs both during the war and in post-war years. And many of that population never returned to the state of Arkansas.
War takes the men away, the women move into town. You know, that definitely had a role, and there's less farm labor.
Two brothers, John and Mac Russ, are probably more responsible for the invention of the mechanical cotton picker than anyone else. The brothers in the late 40s came to Pine Bluff, Arkansas, and got with Mr. Ben Pearson and began to develop and build their own mechanical cotton picking machines. It was said when the mechanical cotton picker came out that it could pick the same amount of cotton in 1 hour that it would take 50 men to pick all day. There was an expression that came about that was said to be tractored off your land, certainly after World War II, when they said, "What happened to you? Where are you going? What are you doing? What happened to you?" "Oh, I had to leave my place. I got tractored off my land." It was because there was a severe decrease in the amount of labor that was required. Instead of having to, say, have 200 families working a plantation, now they might only need 8 or 10 families, with those primary duties being in driving a vehicle. Farmers, of course, were concerned with transporting their crop to market.
Of course, they used horse-drawn carriages and wagons to carry a bunch of it in the early days.
Water was the key. You had to get your cotton to market, and usually that was by getting it down by steamboat or some other way down to either Memphis and then to New Orleans, or taking it directly to New Orleans. As time went by, of course, the trains came in, and it made it easier to get your cotton bales transported.
There are two major railroads right now, one east and west, one north and south, that transect the rice-growing regions of the state. In the 30s, 40s, and 50s, we were very much family farm-oriented, and the family made up the predominant workforce. Many times what they've done is they've gotten bigger by expanding their equipment. They get bigger equipment so they can take on more acres, and that has just constantly grown since the 1950s. You know, in a row crop they were using 2-row equipment. Now they're using 12-row equipment.
Today we're even acknowledging the century farmers, you know, people that one family has continued to own the same land for over a century. Those are fairly unusual, that you could see the same family maintaining the same ground for 100 years or more. It just goes to show just how much outside major corporations, banks, trust companies, others have acquired the land, and oftentimes they'll hire a farm manager and they will hire him and ask him to oversee the operation.
One of the biggest things that happened was Colonel Sanders starting his Kentucky Fried Chicken, and another big breakthrough was the Chicken McNugget. Those two things really started poultry being in the mainstream of quick serve and fast food restaurants. And once that happened, the volume of poultry meat that was consumed went up and up and up every year. Most of the farms now are 4 to 6 houses, average size. These houses contain 25 to 30,000 birds. Average size farm in a year will produce 460,000 broilers for processing.
Cotton today is still a very desired crop, but it's so mechanized. Every aspect of it, from the planting of it, the fertilization of it, the machines and the equipment are operated or guided by GPS.
A lot of the tractors are outfitted with this GPS technology, so they save fuel because they don't waste passes through the field. The better the technology gets, the more we can do with less people. While we're losing labor, we're adapting by using technology that allows us to get by with less labor.
As we look forward to the next 50 years, Arkansas farmers and their supporting industries continue their innovative and dedicated work as they face the challenges of feeding a growing population while sustaining the environment needed to produce a plentiful and high-quality food supply. Recently, we visited a demonstration homestead just outside of Russellville called the Phoenix Center, where students from the University of the Ozarks Sustainable Agriculture Program pitched in on a workday.
This is the Phoenix Center, an educational farmstead. We are in the northern edge of the river valley, kind of the southern foothills of the Ozarks. What we're trying to do is we're trying to establish a demonstration homestead, an ideal tiny homestead that can be handled by someone who's getting a little older or who's disabled or that sort of thing. We want to show people and share the skills that are required to run a homestead like that, whether it's from general metal work or seed starting or canning or preserving or processing, anything that would have been done on a homestead in, say, the late 1800s. We're really fond of non-electric tools, but we're not afraid of modern things also. We just want to keep those skills alive. If people don't teach them, then where do they go?
We are at the Phoenix Center just outside of Russellville, Arkansas, and I've brought my sustainable agriculture class from the University of the Ozarks to do a workday and help out here in setting up some raised gardening beds and doing a little bit of other cleanup work. At the University of the Ozarks, we've just started a sustainable agriculture minor. There's a class in sustainable agriculture, a class in agroecology, and a class in ecology, but sustainable agriculture is a lot more than just growing food. So we also have a class in small business management because part of sustainability means you have to be economically viable. We also have a class in strategic communications because advocacy and communication is extremely important in agriculture right now. And so that sort of takes part of our third leg of the sustainability, and that would be our taking care of the community. I was kind of surprised. There's a lot of student interest in this minor. I was afraid I'd be really groveling to get students to take these classes, and they're really excited to do it, and they enjoy the time we spend together in the garden, and they enjoy getting out in the community and doing different activities in the community.
I personally took this class because I think that sustainable agriculture is really important. I think that everybody needs to do this. This is something that I want to pass down to my children. If in future years it's something that I want to be able to teach them and teach other people around me so that they can know how to do this stuff and they can be able to provide this type of food for people.
I'm heavily involved in conservation initiatives already. I've done some conservation work in my past, and I think that sustainable agriculture is a big part of that as well, moving in that same direction. So I thought it'd be awesome to get learn skills for agriculture, and even just for myself in the future, maybe with my own family, being able to develop my own garden, which a lot of people don't really know how to do these days. So,
well, it's actually my first environmental studies class. It's sustainable agriculture. Right now, we're learning like how to grow and what's appropriate to grow at what times. And I don't have much background personally. I lived on a farm, but I didn't really work the garden or the growing aspect. But I feel like that's something that I need to do, and that's why I took the class.
Everybody complains that being a farmer is hard work. Well, it is, but folks like these ladies and gentlemen out here, they're helping make good, nutritious, wholesome food available for everybody. And food is it's not a privilege, it's a right. Everybody should be able to have good food and good company for that matter.
I really want to get into urban agriculture, so just all of it really. Whenever I heard that we were getting a sustainable agriculture class, I was super excited. I think urban agriculture is the answer for the future. As cheesy as it may sound, there's a lot of environmental problems and problems with the food network and how it is functioning, and I think the answer is in local and urban food sheds. I think that this is a great opportunity, and functions like the Phoenix Center are great ways for the urban and local food movement to get started.
feel like my generation's kind of stepping up and like taking the initiative so that we can become more sustainable, and that agriculture practices, like we're going back to our roots, so that it's taking a step back but also being progressive. And I feel like my generation's really taking that on right now.
People coming together over agriculture. It's happening more and more often these days. We found a wonderful example of generations coming together over a small community garden in downtown Hot Springs. Let's take a look.
We're at the Park Haven Community Garden here on the corner of Park Avenue and Holly Street. I was introduced to the community gardens through the Arkansas Master Gardener Program. This is the second garden in the city of Hot Springs, and we were trying to expand it to cover some of the food deserts in town, more of the urban areas that first and foremost aren't familiar with gardening or don't have the space to. We also do some educational work out here for kids, and we're creating a park as well where there's an area that does not have any parks. Prior to us coming here, this was an empty lot with a large felled tree. Where we have our raised beds was a parking lot that we converted the back half of it into raised beds and ADHC accessible beds for elderly and wheelchair participants.
When we first got here, it was a pile of rubble. A church had burned down and nothing was happening here. It was virtually blight. So what we wanted to do was convert blight into something that was a green space. Green spaces tend to provide a little more optimism for the neighborhood, and that optimism continues to grow and grow. We really hope we get some economic redevelopment in the neighborhood, and that's already happening as well. Actually started out as a community development offshoot of the neighborhood association. What we wanted to do was have some people on the street improving, and the idea was that that concept would spread, and amazingly it has. The neighborhood organization has gotten thousands of dollars worth of community development projects up and down the street, and individuals, private owners have rehabbed many houses in the neighborhood, as I think as a result of the interest that's shown in this garden.
Everyone comes out here. As I said, we have elevated beds for people in walkers and wheelchairs, raised beds for people that don't want to get out here in the field and dig in it. So I mean, we have them from literally toddlers running around to people above 80 years old. We're surrounded with apartment complexes, and there's also retirement homes just around the corner. They will come down. On occasion, they'll get shuttled down. They can get their exercise, walk around in a green space versus just hallways of their rooms and rec rooms. Like I said, we're also building a park in the front that'll have benches, places to sit, be out in nature when you're not surrounded necessarily by a natural setting. Granted, it is Hot Springs, but this is the urban section of town.
We grow everything you'd find in a normal southern garden. Everything from okra to corn to tomatoes. Some people are a little more adventurous and grow exotic beets and chard, and just about everything will grow here. We're just planting peach trees today. I have 2 plots, and I have helped Kahig plant all these trees that you see around. There are peach trees and pear trees and nut trees. We try to make everything that we plant edible so that the people in the future will have a place to come and get good nutrition.
Last year we did about 200 plus tomato plants, okra, peppers, corn, and those are all the community ones. Everyone likes those, you know, tomatoes and that. But I'll probably have some interesting fruits and vegetables in mine. So,
somebody wanted to get involved in the garden project, they could go to our Facebook page, which is Park Haven Community Gardens on Facebook, and there is an application under the notes button, and there's also a list of rules and regulations that you can find under notes. Or they can just get an application from us here at the garden.
If it's something you've never done before, you're missing out. I'm a master gardener myself, and I'm still learning. So we have people from 10 years old to 80 years old, can answer any question you might have. And the reward of getting out there, putting your hands in the dirt and growing something from seed to the table is truly amazing. You are missing out if you don't at least give it a try.
Give it a try indeed. Joining us now is Arkansas Agriculture Secretary Wes Ward. Thank you for being back with us.
Oh, absolutely, sir. Glad to be here.
We were looking at that first segment and some amazing information that I guess I knew, but I didn't remember.
Yeah.
If we look back at the history of agriculture in Arkansas, prior to the Civil War, 1/2 of all cotton production in the world came from the United States. That's amazing to think about today.
Yeah.
Cotton has had its ups and downs. How does Arkansas compare today with other states that produce cotton?
Yeah, so it's Arkansas. You know, people like to say cotton is king in Arkansas, and it's king in other states as well. But you know, especially where we come from in eastern Arkansas,
right.
Where I grew up, cotton, every field was cotton. So it's certainly seen some adjustments. But Texas is usually the leading state as far as production of cotton, but Arkansas is always right there in the top. So Arkansas generally is usually ranked around 3rd or 4th in cotton and cottonseed production. So we're very competitive up there with the rest of them.
Are we beginning to get competition from other countries that are raising cotton now?
There is, and I think U.S. ranks 3rd as far as world production. So it's a global marketplace. You know, we see that every day in all the commodities where we're all. What happens in Arkansas is impacted by things that happen across the world, so cotton is no different.
And that's a good point, because really, if you're not involved in agriculture, it's hard to realize how world events can impact agriculture production here at home. Cotton's a good example of that. For the last couple of years here in Arkansas and even up into the Boot Hill, Missouri, we've seen prices fall.
Right.
What's the driving force behind that? Overproduction,
or? To an extent. So we've seen China basically came on the scene and bought up a lot of the cotton production. So that China's behavior kind of affected the market prices, and that's you know, again, going back to the global marketplace, what they do has an impact on what happens here. So we've seen China involved, Brazil involved, and that affects prices. Looking at the whole picture, the whole global marketplace, it makes a difference.
You know, we talked about this briefly during your last visit. Farmers that traditionally grew cotton here in Arkansas and even up into the Boot Hill, Missouri, are turning to alternative crops.
Right.
And we're seeing acreage that was once in cotton now being used for peanuts, corn, other products. Is this a trend you think that will continue?
It's we get different reports. So when you look at cotton production, at least over the last 10 years, so 2005 we had over 1 million acres. In 2015, what some say was the lowest on record since they've recorded cotton production, so just a little over 200,000. So that was a significant drop in cotton acreage in Arkansas. We expect, hearing from a lot of producers, that they're going to increase their acreage this year, so we think there'll be a bump in those cotton acreage across Arkansas and across the southern U.S. But as you see those other commodities, you see peanuts, sorghum, we are seeing producers that are shifting, that are trying to diversify, trying to do other things to capture those premium prices and other commodities when they present themselves. So it's a pretty natural occurrence for people to try to take advantage of what opportunities exist, and cotton producers no different.
Well, we see the buyers of these alternative crops begin to locate processing facilities closer to the farmers, so that it's not such a struggle to get their product to market.
I think so. Peanuts certainly did that. Pocahontas area with the buying points and the processing facilities there, and I think peanuts will be here into the future. The acreage may change, but peanuts will be here, and those facilities make it endure a little bit longer. So that certainly helps with those other commodity aspects.
We're talking about the big three, and equally affected by world events is rice. And I didn't realize that rice production in Arkansas dated back as late as began in 1896, with some difficulty there at the beginning on how the methodology used to raise rice. But it's been a major crop here in the natural state, and we heard in that first segment how the creation of these cooperatives to work with rice and actually evolved into Rice and Foods. I would assume now that's one of the top in the world for cooperative.
Absolutely, yeah. It is. Riceland Food certainly has a name across the world. They work with USA Rice, with Arkansas Rice, those organizations, so they're very well known. The rice industry in Arkansas is a very loud voice. Arkansas is, we produce 50% of the nation's production of rice, and so we've got a lot to be proud of. We've got a lot of organizations and businesses that make sure that people know about that. So it's a pretty incredible industry here within Arkansas.
So over the last 50 years, not just world events, but consumption. I mean, he made the point about the introduction of Kentucky Fried Chicken into fast food, and Chicken McNuggets had a direct bearing on what happened to poultry production in Arkansas.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, and when you think about Arkansas, what probably the two things that we're known the most for now is rice and poultry. So those two, we hear about it. They're influenced by different things, but we hear about it. Whether it's a USDA trade mission to Africa, you hear when someone says Arkansas, they think poultry, they think cotton, they think rice, they think those key commodities, and that's what Arkansas is known for, and we've got a really tremendous history, and we'll have a tremendous future with those commodities.
Okay, I want to shift from looking at the past to looking at the future a little bit. We recently, our governor became, I guess, the first American governor to visit Cuba since the embargo.
Especially since the embassy opened. Absolutely.
Right.
That's correct.
One fact that he was talking about was how Cuba could become an important source for American agricultural products. What are we primarily looking at there?
Right. So again, the governor taking that trip over there was kind of visionary and recognizing how important agriculture is to our state, being that lead promoter of Arkansas as a whole, but certainly Arkansas agriculture. When you look at some of the economic analysis that's been done for agriculture specifically, Arkansas comes out on the top just about every time. So specifically, that's about $36 million economic impact. Once some of those restrictions are lifted, rice would be the number one benefactor of that. Poultry would be a benefactor. So several aspects of Arkansas agriculture would benefit from those relationships with Cuba. And the governor saw that. Governor promoted it and has been very involved. And it's been really good to have him, Senator Bozeman, Congressman Crawford. We've got a lot of key leaders in Arkansas that are really helping move that dialogue forward with Cuba.
Right. We got about a minute left. We look ahead. What do you see as some of the major challenges to Arkansas farmers, say, in the next 2 decades?
Right. Yeah. So kind of what they've already talked about today. You look at the technology and how that's changed American agriculture, Arkansas agriculture, and it's not done yet. So it's going to continue to adapt and change. You see the use of drones. You see the use of even larger equipment that's used to capture some of those economies of scale. And what seems normal today in 5 years, 10 years from now will be out of date, and it'll be something we haven't even thought of yet. So it's technology will certainly have a big impact. You see the rising age of the average farmer. So you're going to see a shift in newer, younger people getting into the industry. So there's a lot of changes that will continue to happen to the industry.
A lot on the horizon.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Mr. Secretary, thank you for being with us.
Yes, sir. Great to be here.
Great to have you back.
Yes, sir.
That's all the time we have for now. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you will join us again next time for Agri Arkansas.
Major funding for this program provided by the Moving Image Trust Fund. Additional funding for this program provided by the Arkansas Agriculture Department.